Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is a long titled tea, so I'm going to read it. It's from Yogi. It's an herbal tea called Blackberry Apple Cider Digestive Awakening with apple cider vinegar to support healthy digestion. So let's see if it supports healthy digestion. It tastes okay. It's not amazing. It doesn't taste bad. Like it just has a mild taste to it, which is good. I know apple cider vinegar is supposed to be good, but it could be a little acidic, so I have to be. You guys really tuned in to hear this, right? But anyway, yeah, I mostly drink herbal teas now, so that's probably what you're going to see most of the time on this channel. I do drink caffeine in the morning sometimes, so yeah, occasionally we'll shake it up. But what we're talking about today is November and all the reading that goes into it. And I will talk about a book that I read already in November and some more plans. It's not a strict TBR, but it's just some books that I have that I'm either currently reading, want to read, plan to read, etc. So November, uh, it's one of my favorite activities is in November, which is nonfiction November. I hear that it's supposed to be the last one, but we'll see. But I will say that even if it's officially, I can always read November anything, right? Anything we want. So if I want to read nonfiction, I can read it any month, and I really do love I really do enjoy nonfiction, so I will use any excuse to read it, and that is even in October, which is mostly about reading Victorian novels. I try to find some kind of nonfiction throw in there because I just love it. I just do. I especially like history, but I also like other types, and I'm not gonna go for hours getting into that right now, but it is a joy for me, and for some reason I think it's like, excuse me, it's like when mystery novels become more of a thing for me. When the weather gets cold, so does nonfiction. I read it all year long, but I just love a good, deep, big nonfiction book. And I mostly am leaning towards English history, British history. Um, so that's what you probably see the most of when I talk about things. I hope you don't mind, but it's my taste, and that's it. There are tons of other books that I could have picked, but I thought I'd keep it simple this month. And but before I start my plans, I will show you a book that I just finished. And excuse me. It is a book that I had been looking forward to reading. I've been looking forward to reading, and it's an author that I had heard of for a while. Had been watching some of his videos, um, listening to some podcasts with him, and I finally started reading his books, and that is Dan Jones. He writes mostly English history, and he's got some novels out too. I've been seeing them around for a while, and now I've finally read one, and I have a feeling I'm going to continue doing so. I know there were some people, because I love reading about Richard III, and I'm always hoping that there's going to be a possibility that he did not, you know, murder his nephews or order the murder of his nephews or whatever. There's no proof either way, but seems kind of likely. But I know some Ricardians expressed that Dan Jones was a bit on the side of, yeah, he did it, and wasn't really able to reason much either way. I'll find out for myself, but I also think that one is entitled to that conclusion because it's not a terrible conclusion. I just like when I hear both sides discussed. So we'll see. But anyway, this has nothing to do with that. This is previous to Richard III. This book is his latest book. So I start with the latest book and work my way back, but I do that a lot. So this is Henry V, The Astonishing Triumph of England's Greatest Warrior King. Dan Jones. You see that? You see that picture? This guy, I have never been that into Henry V, which doesn't mean I've never read anything about him. I've read a couple of history books that just got into the history of the time period and covered it a little bit. I have a book back there somewhere about Agincourt, and that is the famous battle that he's famous for during the 100 Years' War between England and France. It was a very famous victory for England, and I've read a few also historical fiction books. Like I read a Jean Plady book for sure, and probably something else, but that's what I'm remembering right now. So I knew enough about him, Henry V. I've actually not read the Shakespeare play. I've heard of it, and from what I hear, and this is going to be another slightly Ricardian moment here, but from what I hear, Shakespeare uh, embellished a bit about his life and made him, made a whole story about him that wasn't quite grounded in fact. Wasn't a bad thing. It's just made drama out of something that may or may not have happened, and that's fine because it's entertainment. But if that's the case, then I will say that people who rely too much on the play Richard III to get their historical information about that king needs to read various history books, and that's okay because I want you guys to read all the history books. People who say this and people who say that, all the sides. If you want to read history, I mean, if you really are interested, I mean, but but just don't go by what Shakespeare did. Shakespeare was very talented, very entertaining, not a historian. Did some research, but he wasn't a historian. You know what I mean? So enough about Shakespeare. But what I do know is that Henry V was the son of Henry IV, which is always convenient, who was never meant to be king in the first place, but in their lifetime, Richard II, who was around the same age as Henry IV, they were like cousins, was the king. He started out as a boy, and he was not a great king. He was pretty tyrannical, not the worst king that ever existed, but not a good one. And things came to a head. A bunch of nobility confronted him about certain things, and then years later, Richard II tried to have his revenge, and Henry IV also was sort of retaliated on in certain ways, in that he was sent on an exile. He was exiled, and when his father, John of Gaunt, who I've read books about too, and very interesting life, when he died, Richard II decided, okay, I'm going to take away all of Henry IV's lands. They're not going to be forfeit to him. And he was the Duke of Lancaster, I believe, which is a very big landholding. He was one of the big ones. And to do that, that really hits you and your future. So that was probably the final straw. I'm just keeping it simple. I'm not going to get into everything because I'm here 7 minutes in still talking about one book. But Henry IV ended up coming back to England, saying that he was just looking after his own territories, but in the end, he took the kingdom from Richard II. He was imprisoned, Richard, and Richard died, probably starved to death, but we're not sure. And then Henry IV was king for a while. He did end up getting sick. He died in his mid-40s, I think it was, and Henry V was a very busy son of his. He was also very active in different military and other administrative duties, especially in late years when Henry IV was quite sick. And so then he became king, and one of his major goals was to take back, as it were, because England had been holding certain lands in France for a long time, so he wanted to take certain ones back. And he led a bunch of sieges, and he was very successful. In the end, it got to the point that he was almost going to be the king of France. He had an agreement that the king at the time, I believe it was Charles VI, who was a mad king, there were a lot of those, once he died, that he would become the king, and he married the daughter of the king of France, Catherine of Valois, and I don't know if I said that right. And but there was still some pushback from the Dauphin, which is like the next in line. But what happened was that Henry V, who was still in his 30s, got sick. I think it was dysentery, and it ended him, which would have been already tragic, but he had gotten married quite late. In those days, his father had a child when he was in his late teens. So, in those days you could do that. So, unfortunately, Henry V not only died quite young, but his son was an infant. So now you got another boy king. A lot of disasters happened as a result, including the Wars of the Roses, really. So this is just a biography of Henry V, and a little description of the different battles, and also about his interests, which I didn't know that much about. He was very much into music. He was an avid reader, which I love, and I still don't like him very much. I don't know. He was just kind of. I'm not a big military hero kind of person, especially once all the sieges that people end up having to starve and eat their cats and stuff, and you know, yeah, that's a controversial thing to say nowadays, so I'm not going to get into that. But eating anything desperately because they were under siege. Why? But I don't like war. I don't like anything, in those regards. So that's what you get for liking history, but not liking reading about war. Or battles. So yeah, it happens. Anyway, but the book was very well paced. It was written in a present tense, so you felt like you were there with him. And I gave it 5 stars because it was a really interesting book. It kept me going. If someone could write a book about one of the kings of England that I don't hate him, but I didn't really care much for, and that time period is one of the least of the history of England in the past 1,000 years, that one of the least interesting to me, uh, that's good. So anyway, that was a bit of a ramble, I think, but I don't think it was quite a review, but I do think that if you are interested in history and you like good writing, I think it was very good writing. So, and it might make you interested in reading more. You want to see what happens next. Next would be the Wars of the Roses, really. I mean, Henry VI, and then Joan of Arc. That's another thing that happened as a result of all this. I gotta read about Joan of Arc, I think. But that's another story for another time. Anyway, I'm rambling. I am mumbling. I hear it. So let's talk about some of my plans. Some of which is stuff I've already started. And I mean, if I start a few pages, I don't really want to count that as started. But this one I've made some progress in. I've been reading it for a while. This is definitely a nonfiction, and it's called The Secret Lives of Booksellers and Librarians. True Stories of the Magic of Reading. James Patterson and Matt Eversman? Matt Eversman? Is there a picture of James Patterson? Of course there is. In case you don't know who James Patterson is, this is not a book written entirely by him. This is a collection of people who are booksellers or librarians, and which is what it's called, and their lives and what their experience has been with their careers, and what they love about books, what they love about bookshops and reading, and the people that are involved. It's a book about books, really, and I love that. It's one of my favorite types of books. So, excuse me. It's a very nice read, and I've been reading it slowly because it's the kind of book that you could just spend time with. It's not like a page turner, like, oh man, I just have to read 100 pages in one day. It's not like that. You read a couple of experiences, a couple of chapters, and it's good. I like it though. The tea is nice. It's just not amazing. Uh, so let's see. Still, I'm sticking to nonfiction, and then I'll show you the fiction books that I have too, because yes, I'm also reading novels. And here's a book that I bought in London. My last trip to London, I was in Hatchards, which again, if you've never been to London, or if you've been to London and haven't been to Hatchards, by all means, if you find yourself there and you like interesting bookshops, this is an old bookshop. It's been around forever, and it might be the oldest one in London, and it's beautiful. I believe it's now part of the Waterstones ownership, but it still has its own flavor. I could spend hours there, but I saw this book and I said, oh, I must have it. It's called Girl in a Green Gown, The History and Mystery of the Arnolfini Portrait by Carola Hicks. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, the painting has always been amazing to me. And of course, the green color, that's one of my favorite colors, in case you haven't noticed. This painting has always been one that I found fascinating. Well before I saw it, with my own eyes. My father I found it actually just today. I was going through some of my books and I found his textbook. He took a history of art course in college and he enjoyed it, but he showed me that picture, the Arnolfini portrait, and he just loved it. He loved the details involved in it. Even if you look at it, there's you could see a reflection of the painter in there and a little bit of writing. by Van Eyck, who was the painter. And look at this dog. What on earth? And it's just it's just a gorgeous, brilliant painting. So when I went to one of my trips to London, I finally went to the National Gallery, and I saw it there, and there was so many people surrounding it at that first time. But I got a print, and you can't see it, but it's above here because I bought it for my dad. But since he's passed, um, I've kept it, and it always reminds me of my dad, no matter how many years I've since I've seen it and known it for myself. So I think it's kind of cool. There's a book about it. The writer, I found out, died while finishing up this book, which always makes me sad. But and the reviews that I've seen online haven't been amazing, but I want to keep up with it because I just want to read a little bit behind that. And what's interesting is, there, he's working for the Duke, I believe the Duke of Burgundy, and it's one that is actually mentioned in the Henry V book. He in the later part of the story, so the timeline slightly interlaps, inter something, and so I like that. I'm continuing with that time period a little bit, but in a different place. So I hope I like it. I really do, because I've been wanting to get to it for a long time, and I don't want to be disappointed if possible, And now my next history book is a book that I've been looking forward to reading for a while. I enjoy this writer quite a lot, and that is his latest release, Son of Prophecy, The Rise of Henry Tudor by Nathan Amin. There it is. There's no picture of him, I think, in here, but but he's easily found online. He has a Substack. He has all kinds of social media, and he's just all over the place, and I love it. He is the founder, I believe, of the Henry VII Society, which has gotten on some people's nerves, especially, again, getting back into the whole Ricardian thing, because he believes that Richard did have the princes in the Tower murdered. I'm not going to get into the whole history about it again, because I've discussed it, but if you just, if you don't know what I'm talking about, please take a moment, if you want to know, to do a quick search online, if you need to know what I'm referring to. But I actually appreciate him and a couple of other historians that get together and talk. Matthew Lewis, who is a Ricardian, they are able to talk it and debate it out and still be friends. And isn't that a beautiful thing? So I mean, it's lovely to see anyone who doesn't agree but still gets along talking. It feels good because they're not fighting, they're not insulting, it's just so nice. And it's just about history, but some people get really worked up about their interests, and I understand it. I understand it to a point, but I also don't think that one should get so passionate, But so I read his book about the Tudor pretenders, which means Henry VII, who was the first Tudor king, had a number of people who pretended to be the princes of the Tower, who would have been the supposedly rightful kings of England, and they were coming up against Henry VII if possible, but they weren't successful, and probably weren't the princes of the Tower. They probably were already dead, but it intrigues a lot of people because what if, But this is about Henry VII, but it's actually about how the side of Wales, because the Tudors were from Wales, and yes, Henry VII had other ancestry too, French and English, amongst others, which gave him a big claim to the crown. Not the biggest, but a decent enough claim. That but the Welsh side is often glossed over, his Welsh ancestry, and the fact that there was a whole history between England and Wales, a lot of which was a little bit difficult, because England was same thing with Ireland. England was always trying to just be in charge of these lands, and the people didn't always like it and wanted to retain their own identities and cultures, and yeah, there were ups and downs there. But so suddenly, when there is a king who has a Welsh background, there must have been a feeling of, well, this is our, you know, this is our savior almost, not quite like a messiah, but like a pretty big deal. So this gets into a little, like, I only just started the book. Like I said, I'm planning to read it throughout this month. Hopefully finish it this month, but we'll see. It gets into a bit of Welsh history with the English for a number of centuries, and then it culminates with the history of the Tudors, Henry Tudor, and how he became the King of England, Henry VII. And I've heard nothing but good things about this book, and I've been looking forward to reading it, so I'm very happy that I have it and that I've already started it. So, and I'm also happy, which it's not huge print, but a lot of books that I get from the UK on Blackwell's, which is where I got it from, the print is often quite small. In fact, this book, which I bought, um, in London, the print is really quite small. But this book at least is somewhat more readable, and that is something I need more and more as time goes on. I might read other nonfictions in November, but those are the main ones. And here are the novels. I'm going to start with one that I took out of the library a few weeks ago, and I only just started a couple of pages because that's all I read on the way home from the library. And it is from Nicholas Meyer, called Sherlock Holmes and the Telegram from Hell. Here it is. And I read his book, now I forgot what it's called, something percent solution. 7%? I can't remember now. I should know as someone who really likes Sherlock Holmes, but it's a book that was written decades ago. And I read it at some point, I think, during pandemic times, because I remember where I was when I was reading it. And it's pastiches. It's the sequels or continuations or slightly different slightly different explanations of the Sherlock Holmes stories, which I kind of like. Variations are fun, and he did a very good job of it. But I honestly, and I don't mean to be disparaging, I thought that this author was long gone, because usually if I see writers who were writing in the past, that's usually the conclusion. Then I saw a picture of him, I think it was at the Mysterious Bookshop in downtown Manhattan, and he was promoting his latest book, and I said, oh, isn't that wonderful? So I thought, let me take this out of the library. So I'm going to try to read this in November as well, I hope. Because it's nice to have another mystery novel going, and maybe I'll wear the hat again. I don't know. We'll see. And then my sister and I were our buddy reading the Emily books, which are the Emily of New Moon, Emily Climbs, and Emily's Quest. Yes, by Ellen Montgomery, most famously known as Anne of Green Gables writer. But there's a lot of people right now on BookTube who are reading Montgomery novels, which is great. But so my sister and I just thought we'd take it kind of slow, not rush through it. But we were reading the first Emily book, I think, in September, and then we skipped October. And now in November, we're going to start up again. And I'm excited about that. So this is Emily Climbs. So she's a little bit older, and I don't remember anything because I don't think I read these books. So I don't know what's going to happen. So yay. I like that, because I have read a lot of Ellen Montgomery books over the years, and so I don't mind rereading it. I don't remember everything, but it's kind of fun having certain ones, the first time. Last but not least, I hope I can fit this in. We'll see, or at least continue it as time goes on. This is a book I started a few pages. It was one of my Victober TBRs, and there are a number of books that I didn't. I'm going to do a wrap up for Victober soon. But there's a number of October books that I just didn't get to, and I knew that was going to happen, but I felt a little disappointed, as I always do. But I thought, okay, at least I'm going to pick one that I can continue with, and that is the Mrs. Oliphant, Chronicles of Carlingford, the Perpetual Curate. There it is. Nice Virago book, but a good print, a very readable print, and it's part of a series that is, slightly Barchester-esque, like Anthony Trollope, from what I hear. I don't mind if this is out of order. I just want to read it. I'm just glad I have it. So it looks cozy, and I could use a little bit of cozy. I think amongst my reading, I don't have a lot of cozy. So yeah, there it is. You can see I have a little bookmark in here already. Because I believe I got this at Bookseller, which is a library book sale that runs a few days a week. And so this is the bookmark. It's got a cat that looks like my cat Janie a little bit. That expression is exactly hers. So I like that. So those are the books. These are, I called it my plans and my progress because that's what it is. And I hope you enjoyed. So if you'd like to leave a comment, please do. Let me know what you've been reading or plan to read in November. If you're participating in Nonfiction November, because I just love nonfiction, so I love to hear more about it, but other books too. And that is all for now. If you like these type of videos, please subscribe and like all the things. And that is all for now. This is Catherine at Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and bookville day. Bye.